I am Jim Collison and live from the Gallup Studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup Strengths Explorer series recorded on March 28th, 2019. Strengths Explorer is a podcast series that dives deep into the 10 talent themes of the CliftonStrengths Youth Explorer. I don't think I said that right, but designed for adults who are interested in accepting, affirming, and growing the individual potential within a child. This series expands your language to describe what is right and strong with children 10 to 14. That right and strong is very important. Maybe we'll cover that a little bit in the post show as well. To further your understanding, check out Gallup's book, Strength-Based Parenting, available wherever books are sold. You can get it directly from us if you'd like on our store, shop.gallup.com. And today's theme is organizer. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com for all your Clifton Strengths coaches and training needs. You can also catch the video, both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. We call that podcasting. All the cool kids are doing it. 51% of Americans now have listened to at least one podcast in a week.
What?
If you haven't done it, did you know that? Did you know that stat?
I think I heard you say it last week, but I'm still kind of blown away by it.
I know. It's all the cool kids are doing it. You can do it too on your phone. Each Android or iPhone has a podcast app. Search for Gallup Strengths Explorer on that. You'll find us here. Subscribe. Get subscribed to it and get it automatically every time we release it. If you need any help, we've got all kinds of information on our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com, and then click on the resources tab. You can also send us an email. Super easy, coaching@gallup.com. All right. Micah Libran is our host today. She's a workplace consultant here with me. Micah, always great to spend my Thursdays with you. Welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Best part of my week.
Me as well. We are going to talk about organizer today. We've got a lot of things to talk about for folks who are wondering what this organizer thing means. Can you give us kind of an overview?
Certainly. So organizer describes those kids who really find some joy in scheduling, planning, and organizing their world. They also see, I think, a big boost, a big benefit from going through that sort of practice of taking something chaotic and creating order. When you notice kids with high organizer, there's probably that notion that there's a place for everything or everything in its place. It really can manifest in a lot of different ways. They tend to be kids who get details right and really love the getting of the details right. But I also think that of the 10 Strengths Explorer themes, this is probably the one that adults are quickest to say, nope, the assessment is wrong. This does not describe my kid. His room's a mess. So I think it's important for us to realize that with all Strengths Explorer themes, they are meant to be broad. They're not meant to be a sort of narrow focus on one aspect of your child's talent. And especially within Organizer, there are so many different places where they can really channel their desire for order. So it might be that they're particular about something and take delight in creating order around that thing, but that it doesn't necessarily spill over into every aspect of their lives. Another hallmark of organizer is anticipation and awareness, that desire to know what's coming, what's now, maybe even what should be.
As a kid, I would make a mess to clean it up. Like, I know that sounds weird, a little maybe a ranger maximizer kind of working together on that. I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an organizer, but I found great satisfaction in taking chaos and making order. And if chaos didn't exist, I would invent it to do that. It was just one of those things, Micah, when we think about spotting organizer, again, very broad terms, but what else, what other things what should we be looking for?
You have a ranger, we should say out loud, right? So maybe it did manifest that way. Another maybe contrast I'll offer, and then I'll talk about that spotting piece, is we talked about discoverer a few weeks ago. That kids with discoverer will probably pull things apart. Kids with organizer will pull things together. Maybe you've got a kid who's doing both. maybe what Jim's describing here is doing both. Other things you might look for when you're spotting organizer, it could be that kid who likes to create order in their world. They might pay attention to schedules, asking, hey, what are we doing next? They have fun anticipating what's coming and how it fits into what they already know to be reality. They might make some enjoyment from perfection. So seeing their ability to improve the order or the display of something and then jumping in and doing that improvement. It could be very important that they're on time. They might also really love order and rules. Sometimes I think, especially for kids, their first exposure to order outside themselves is a rule or a social contract, or anytime you say, oh, we always do this, or we don't do this. They'll probably also notice when people around them don't follow those rules. So that might be something you're noticing with some organizer talent. It could be, let's say, a middle schooler whose locker is a disaster, but still has a strong need to adhere to a schedule. Or maybe it's a kid with a messy room, but a very picky timeline and deadline orientation. Don't write off the assessment as being wrong just because you can't spot this one from your limited perspective in your child's life. Could there be another statement that could hit you in the gut more than admitting we all have limited perspectives of child's lives? If you're their parent, if you're their a family member, even if you're their teacher, there's so much more that they're seeing and experiencing, even just in their own brain, than we know. So this can be one that shows up overtly. It can also be one that is kind of internal. And that, I think, is definitely a differentiator of organizer compared to the other 9 Strengths Explorer themes.
Mm-hmm. Connie in chat room says, yeah, her son had organizer in his top 3 when he was younger. His room was a mess, but he was really good at organizing events and team projects at school, right?
Cool.
And I think that's a really good, just because you're an organizer, your whole world may not exist that way, right? There may be these niche areas where, as adults, as we're relating to this, where we could see those pieces. I love your caution. In other words, don't make this and sometimes too, like when my number 4 went to kindergarten, this kid changed. Like, he was a terror at home. We got him in kindergarten and he got around structure and things completely changed in his world. So I think it's important to be careful to not make these suppositions about their environment that's around them, or that, we said to his kindergarten teacher, what have you done? Where is our child? This is a completely different kid. And so when they start spending time in school, they're spending 8 or 9 hours now out of an environment you don't have control over anymore and you can't see, right? So, Micah, when we think about relating to this talent as an adult, which I think is why we do this webcast, what kind of advice or what kind of suggestions would we give?
So this is a great example of how different these younger talents are from the CliftonStrengths themes. As we mature, we might grow from organizer into maximizer. You mentioned this, Jim, that ability to make something good even more perfect. But it could also be more about the executing of order, something that might look more like discipline. I think there's certainly hints of strategic, that sort of what if then what. In order to relate to organizer, it's important for an adult to consider aspects of your life where order is important. And if order is too strong of a word for you, ask yourself about habits. What are the habits that are most important for you? How does that order or habit make your life easier? That's what's beautiful about these kids. They can notice that, they can create that in lots of different places and spaces.
One of the things as an adult, I think, too, we have to be careful where if we have high responsibility and we try to superimpose responsibility on top of organization, I think they're 2 separate things. Just because you're ordered or you like order does not necessarily mean you do that every single time. Getting back to Connie's point, right? My room is a mess. My world is clean. If as adults we bring a responsibility or a high discipline to that, we may superimpose that upon everything. Oh, why isn't your entire world organized then? Right. And I think that's one of those things is we've been really cautious during this series to say, adults, don't superimpose your own themes on top of these or make assumptions about how your themes translate to theirs. They're different. They're separate human beings. They come at this differently. I don't know. You want to add anything to that before we kind of...
we talk about the purpose of this podcast being just to expand the conversations we can have. I think that gets at the heart of what I love most about this tool is it's not just about the conversations. It's being able to open up the pathways of excellence beyond what you see with your own talent filter. It's admitting that as humans, we're noticing and valuing certain things, right? And those certain things are probably filtered through our own lens of literally what we even see. There might be other options out there for excellence that we are not even on the same radio frequency as. So, what this does is it helps us open up. Hey, what frequency is your kid receiving? Right. So, what are they noticing as being great? I remember the first time I ever worked with Strengths Explorer was with a group of teachers in Texas who were specifically using this in a special ed situation. And they talked about Strengths Explorer being something that they could do to customize rules that every kid had. And so, if you had a kid, for example, with Explorer, that person's rule might be she cares a lot about giving us the day's schedule. So every morning, the rule was nobody begins class until Sally has told us what the weather is and what lunch is going to be today. And I like that idea of rules, but they expanded it to all the themes, being able to say, here is one way that we can all agree to give this person permission and space and attention and celebration for who they are at least once every single day. If you expand that idea of rules beyond just how do you treat the person, maybe what Strengths Explorer also gives you is an opening for how do we determine success? So instead of being limited to our definition of what greatness looks like based on what we know we're capable of, you no longer have to have a good memory. You no longer have to even have a good childhood in order to raise a good kid, because you don't have to rely only on your filter. You can instantly captivate them based on theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult to do. I think it takes other adults in partnership helping us kind of pull ourselves out of here's what I think is good, and therefore that's what I'm going to teach you what to be good at. It takes more than just one person doing this. Ideally, at the very least, it takes an assessment to sort of bring ourselves out of ourselves and be able to say, all right, here's a different mirror that I can use to reflect my kid back to themselves instead of just myself onto my kid.
I think if you take one thing away from this series, I think that's the kernel of truth we are trying to get across. We have a framework in which we speak about this, and some tips to do that. But Mike is super, super important. If you didn't catch that, go rewind, click the back button, whatever it takes. Go 30 seconds back, 30, 30, 30. Hear Micah say that again, because I think you got to get this part. You got to get that part right. Mm-hmm. Speaking of getting things right, we oftentimes use words. And kids are always listening to these. And when we think about the words we use for organizer, sometimes we always want to try and use some positive words moving forward. Give us a clue on some of these, Micah. What are some words around this?
Yeah, think about describing organizers as structured, orderly, neat, detailed. They're planners, maybe systematic, a rule follower, a map maker, anticipatory, specific, efficient.
Yeah, and I would be interested to hear what others think. Like we say these words, they're getting captured and put in a spreadsheet that will live forever as we talk about these. Thanks, Chris. What are the words though? What are you thinking when we think of organizer? What are those really positive, forward-thinking words that you can use? So, what do we do with this, Micah? What should we do moving forward? What do adults can do with this?
I think it's important to be an explorer before you're a treasure hunter. So don't just say, I'm going to specialize in something. Cast a really wide net for the places, the spaces, the activities that the child finds the greatest need for or delight in order. And then once you've found that, let them take the lead on making improvements and on building habits. So again, realize that there's going to be the need to cast a wide net. There's going to be a lot of variety for how this can show up. So don't ever think you know more than they do about their talent. But also don't feel like it's your responsibility to prescribe their order or where it should be. Instead, be very open and I think overtly probably open, specifically with an organizer of where is this going to show up? Be very curious about it. So here's a couple questions that you could ask to stay curious. Better than just how was your day? What did you organize? How did you bring structure to that? What is something you love to have just perfect? What's the best routine or habit of your day? Who could benefit from how you like to organize? And where do you think you would start with that person? If everyone in our family or our classroom followed one rule, which one would you most like it to be? What did you notice about your schedule today? What's easier when it's organized? If you had any helper, who would you want to help you organize?
Micah.
Or even just who would you want to help you?
I want Micah to help me. That's what I want.
The last one I say, whose habits or structure do you admire most?
Yeah, I actually find I'm drawn to folks who have high habit structures. I'm not that way in a lot of ways, but I find myself, I love that question, whose habit or structure do you admire? I think it's just a tremendous question. Micah, you said something right before you started the section about it's their talent to own, not yours. And I think we mentally have to, I don't know if you said that exactly that way or not, but that's the way I take it. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Don't worry, it wasn't recorded or anything.
I think really, really important when we're affirming them, that we're affirming them in a ways that is allowing them to own this and not for them to fit in our boxes, right? We're not manipulating through affirmation. We're affirming them for what's right and what's strong in them. How can we affirm in this way? I mean, what are some great ways to do that?
We're doing that, and we're also teaching them to stay curious about themselves, right? We're not just doing that because we've got a mission around it or because we value affirming their talent. We're doing it because we're teaching them from a young age to recognize those moments of pure bliss and to ask for them, right? A couple ways you can affirm organizer. I think value your child for their consultative abilities. My niece, I'm guessing, has organizer. She's actually taken this, and I just can't remember. But she loves watching home redesign, and I think she spent last summer redesigning her entire room, moving from upstairs to the basement, and it took her pages of planning, and it actually took her a little bit longer because she had to go through her files and decide which paper she was going to keep in the move. But she thinks about life through a similar lens as like somebody who has a show on HGTV. So I think value that in your kid and think about the benefit that brings to your family, to your classroom, to the organization in the space that they interact. Ask them what they notice maybe could benefit from an organization makeover, and then empower them to lead that change. Help your kid learn from other organizers too, whether that's watching a TV show or something else. But I think maybe even set them up with a real partner. I stole this idea from the book Strengths-Based Parenting. It suggests pairing your child up with another kid at least 2 years older, and watching the skills that other child has that can accentuate your kid's organizing talent. Other ideas we have, you could take the conversation just beyond appreciation and really into investment by talking about, hey, what resources might your child utilize in their organizing? It could be as simple as storage boxes or drawer inserts. Maybe it's a daily planner. Be careful not to dismiss this talent as being neurotic or being picky. Marie Kondo is probably richer than everybody here on this podcast today. Heck, she's even a verb. People are saying, I need to Marie Kondo my house. And I'm guessing as a kid, she was an organizer.
You said, and you reminded me, we've been getting, since we've been starting this series, we're starting to see more traffic around Strengths Explorer, which has been great, right? But we often get asked that question about, is there a list of balconies and basements? Micah, real quick, is before we go into the Go Do It challenge, what's kind of our response to that? Can you just run us through that again really quick?
It's just a very different developmental model than CliftonStrengths. So we have to remember that children in general, of which we all were. So let me change my word to humans, start with a lot more options. We start with a lot more pathways. And their biggest growth right now is not within the talent that they have. It is still sort of testing out all of these potential ways of being. And talent grows when we get recognition, when we are in positive relationships around that, when we get affirmed around that talent. So there is so much more developmental opportunity being able to say, hey, maybe this is something you're great at. Maybe there's something else you're great at. We do not think about raw and mature or balconies and basements around Strengths Explorer because the return on investment isn't there compared to being able to say, all right, that maybe that's not you forever. Maybe you've got some other talent that you're showing. Kids are still so fluid between these themes that you're in danger of turning them into sort of siloing or labeling if you start to say, okay, within this stream now let's work vertically toward making sure you're in the balcony. The other thing that we think about it is it's just a much more adult sort of conversation to have. There's a lot of trust that you need. There's a lot of stability and compassion that needs to exist in order to talk to anyone about, hey, are you using your talent in the most mature way? Are you aware of the vulnerabilities that could be there? What are the markers of each of those? That's a hard conversation for anyone to have. And our time is better spent with kids being able just to consistently teach them the power of recognizing what's good when it's good. So it's not just that it's my strategic saying, hey, this is a much better use of our time. It's also just the reality that by the time you go through the work of talking about raw and mature with a kid, chances are they might be displaying a different talent. We need to let them have that fluidity.
Yeah, no, it's just a great reminder. We have a challenge section here. We call it the Go Do It challenge. This what you do. You just go do it. So Micah, walk us through some things that folks can do this week.
Yeah, we want you to think within the next 7 days, what could you do to invest in the talent of your organizer child? 2 activities. Number 1, we call check the box. Select one specific family or classroom occurrence and turn it into a list. Make it a list that you can check off in a really fun way. Colored markers, stickers, maybe even access to an app that your kid doesn't normally get to touch. And then every single day, make it a habit to revisit the list together. Plan something special to celebrate once you've done it all. A couple ideas: you could tackle a family meal plan, a specific chore, maybe supplies that you need to gather, a scavenger hunt in your neighborhood. It could be 10 ways to help out grandma or 7 people who need our love. Number 2, create order from mess. Ask your child to identify a problem that needs solving with order. And this could be a person who needs help, or it could even just be the junk drawer that needs fixing. Give your kid full permission to follow their instincts on how they execute and celebrate once they're finished. I would even say, if it's age appropriate and your kid's ready for this, include the idea of a brief ahead of time and a debrief afterwards, where the kid is in charge of presenting to you their plan and the results of that plan.
We just experienced some historic and monumental flooding here in the state of Nebraska over the last couple weeks. Connie, who joins us in the chat room, affected by that in some ways. I think all is good there, but it's been a lot of opportunities for folks to rise to the occasion to go help. And I think when we think of organizer, I couldn't think of a better situation of taking chaos and making order of it. When we think of what has to happen or what had to happen for first responders or for groups that were getting just supplies and food and those kinds of things, right? But there will be months or maybe years of cleanup that have to happen. And for a student, for a child to kind of see this ability to give back without being given to respond to a need that needs to be done. By the way, they're not as jaded as we are, so they're way more open to it, and they're way giving on this. But I think there's in that, and not this situation, but there's always these kinds of opportunities, Micah. I think to get students giving back in this way, and I think that kind of opportunity is a great way to get them involved. Drag them along with you as you do that. Hey, it might even be good for you to kind of give back and to help organize or to help clean up or to make order out of chaos. I think we need to look for and drag our kids to more things like that.
Jimmy just gave me a great idea for anyone who wants to help kids understand their strengths better. This can very easily be translated to adults too, but name something that we all share. Maybe if you're in a classroom right now, the question is, how can we help flooding? Maybe if you're in a family, it's how can we have a great vacation? Anything that we all share, and then have a conversation, just very openly say, how do your talents do that best? And even just, gosh, we could even go through the 10 and say, how would each of these help out in a flood, right? Or
Mhm.
how would each of these fill out their March Madness bracket? But I think it's a really important discussion to have. I remember in sixth grade reading a book about the Civil War. And our writing assignment afterwards was to describe a specific event in this book, and how we would have reacted. And I felt kind of lost. I mean, I chose what I thought was right, but my teacher wrote back, it was, would you have stood up in a conversation that happened in the town square? Would you have followed what other people were doing? And I claimed that I would have stood up, and my teacher called me out on it. Was like, really? Really? Tell me more about how you would have stood up. And she was right. I totally would not have. I was much more about pleasing the people around me, which was okay too. But I imagine if we would have been equipped with this instead, how much better of a question it would have been of, here's a common challenge, or here's something that we're all experiencing, a chapter in a book, a family vacation, a flood that we want to help out with. And then instead of just leaving it up to the kids to say, hey, what do you think? You've got some evidence to say, what would your strengths have suggested you did? What would an organizer do? What would a discoverer do? And it just accelerates even that self concept that kids have to be able to say, all right, organizer, help with a flood. I'm going to make sure we gather all the supplies we have before we leave. A discoverer, I'm going to probably dig in the dirt while we're helping out, right? But it provides a fantastic framework that can be applied really quickly. But I think the key to this activity is you start with, what is it that we're all sharing? And then just open-ended ask the question, how do your strengths react?
I've spent a lot of time over the last couple years with my daughter as we travel between Omaha and Northwest Missouri State and Maryville, Missouri. 2 hours, hour 45 minutes. We've had some great conversations. Nate says in the chat room, we're heading on vacation tomorrow, longest road trip for the family yet. It'll be our discussion before loading into the car.
Brilliant.
Pretty great, right? You have these opportunities, right, Mike? I just think it's, those car rides, whether it's to and from school or to and from work or whatever, vacation, are these isolated opportunities to really have these meaningful conversations. Let me encourage you to write some of these questions down. We make them available in the show notes. They're available if you go to coaching.gallup.com for each one of these produced. We put the questions out there. Let me encourage you to write some of these down on a note card or whatever. Put them in your phone. Copy those. Go to the show notes and take a picture of that section of however you want to do it, right, of the show notes. But have them available and be intentional. Bring them up. And if it gets weird, don't force it. But it is one of those kinds of things where I think we have this tremendous opportunity to do that. Micah, as we wrap this up, what else would you add before we close it today?
Just a little inside baseball. This morning, I was designing a keynote for adults, and the ask was, it's from an organization who they've had a bunch of new people start, and their biggest problem is they really need them to trust each other really, really fast so that they can be agile. And I think now more than ever, this need to say you either adapt or you get left behind is probably more true. And this concept of agility is how do we quickly adapt to the changing needs that we have there? And really the point that we're helping them understand is you can't be agile, you can't be creative, you can't trust other people if you're trying to be great at everything. So perhaps that's what we're opening up for kids very early on, is not just how would your theme approach this, but where can you really be the best? Thinking about Nate and loading the car, you're being able to say, hey, what part of this vacation really lights you up the most? What are you looking forward to the most? You might have kids who are looking forward to the game of Tetris that is loading the car. Maybe your kid's looking forward to, planning a game we can all play when we're together. I think it's allowing those moments to have variation, allowing there to be some moments where kids just have light bulbs that turn on, and not being disappointed when things fall flat, because that's a clue to some talent. And it allows us to really say, you don't have to be excellent at everything. In fact, we don't want you to. I'm excited about that. Jim, anything to add before I wrap?
No, super great advice. This has been a really good one. I think if you haven't taken anything away, go back to the beginning and listen again. There's been some great content, mostly from Micah. But Micah, why don't you wrap it for us?
Yeah, the goal of our podcast today really is just to improve the conversations that we have with children, to help adults accept, affirm, and grow the natural talents within kids. Special thanks to Dr. Mary Reckmeyer, Jerlene Mosley, and Johnny Leesfeld.
Super great. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center. And let me say, I'll be saying this over the next couple of podcasts as we wrap this up. Over the fall of 2019, we'll actually be pulling Strengths Explorer out of the Gallup Strength Center as Strength Center moves over to Access, and Explorer will not. It will stay on its own. So if you haven't bookmarked that, you might want to start bookmarking it on your web browser just so you know where it's at. StrengthsExplorer.com. All the resources will stay there. Everything will be the same. It'll just be a little bit different. We'll also remind you, too, Micah and I have seen way more emails lately about people who are doing bulk engagements with Strengths Explorer. And they dive in, and it's kind of difficult. We haven't built a super good management tool to do more than, let's just say, 20, so to speak, 20 or 25. Contact us. If you're going to do that, let us know. We can help you with that. If you're going to do a big Strengths Explorer engagement, we've got experts that can help you do that. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, put Strengths Explorer in the subject line, and let us know kind of what you're doing. We can help you out. We've got a couple different ways of getting that done, so let us know. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all the past ones. They're on our coaches blog. Go to coaching.gallup.com. Don't forget, if you're not coming to the summit, you should be. Clifton Strength Summit, June 3rd, 4th, and 5th here in Omaha of 2019. It might be after that. If that's the case, we probably still are doing summit prep in some. Mike, it feels like it never ends, right?
Yep.
She's responsible for a whole bunch of stuff around the summit.
Say that out loud.
I'm sorry. So if you're interested in joining us, now would be the time to get registered for that. Where it's coming up very, very fast. CliftonStrengthsSummit.com. Join our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/called to coach. A lot of announcements, everything we do there is posted there. A great way to stay close and just be in the know. I want to thank you for joining us today. We will do some post show and have you stay. If you're listening live, stay tight. If you haven't listened live, Gallup.eventbrite.com. You can see all the shows that we do live. We'd love to have you come out. The best show is the live show. So you want to come out and join us and get that on your calendar. We'll see you next time. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.